How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to the Fantasy Assessment. This is season 2, episode 4. And if you've been here, if you've not, if you're joining us for the first time, thank you. Welcome in. This is your one-stop shop for fantasy advice tailored to your rosters. My name is Rahul. You can find me on Twitter at nrahul11. And of course, here with my co-hosts, Chu Russell and Jerry Wilkie. Chu, how are you doing today, my man?
Doing good, Roll. Just looking forward. I know next week, of course, we do every 2 weeks. So next week will actually be the NFL draft. So looking forward to the next episode also where we get to talk about, we've had a month or month and a half where it's just been nothing really happening. So looking
Yeah.
forward to having some real tangible stuff to talk about.
I can't wait for everything we've been yapping about for the last month, 2 months to be completely wrong and turned on its head by the NFL draft,
Yep.
as it seems to happen every year. But yeah, we are looking forward to that. And I will plug this right before we get to Jerry, but do join us next Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for the NFL draft on Going for Two. We're gonna have a whole bunch of characters, the whole circus, if you will be on at different slots. Jerry and me, I think we're sharing the 10 p.m. to midnight slot on day one. So definitely looking forward to that. A lot of great content coming your way. So do join us there. And of course, on that note, Jerry Wilkie, glad to have you back. You were on a bye last week. How you been?
Yeah, had an early season bye for me. I've been good, got everything I needed to get done, and yeah, next Thursday, I can't wait. We take the draft home. I think I don't have my Bills thing up in the background anymore, doing some construction around here. But being a Bills fan, we're gonna be on the clock during our time slot, so that's pretty cool.
That actually is exciting. I'm gonna have to make sure. Is this okay to say on a live? I might have to illegally stream the draft, so I'm a little worried about kind of being behind the 8 ball. So I'm gonna have to figure out that situation before next week. But that is next week, the NFL draft. A week from today, it kicks off. Today, though, we are bringing to you the episode where generational talents are not welcome. They are not allowed here because we're talking about the next tier of rookies coming to you. The 103 to, is that to the 105? Is it to the 106? Is it all the way to the 108? We'll get into all those kinds of questions, but we're here to break down the second, third, fourth, the second tier of rookie talents after the generational Caleb Williams, the generational Marvin Harrison Jr. We're going to give some love to the players that come after as we break down a team that has the rookie 103 and needs a quarterback pretty desperately. Spoiler alert. But that's the plan for today. Before we get into that, though, is this week's segment of Choose Your Fighter. Of course, that's where we have kind of a topic of the week, and we all give our candidates to go home and bring the bacon home, go out there and bring the bacon home for us. This week's question is, who is your QB2? Chu, who's your guy?
So earlier in the process, I'd kind of waffle back and forth. I'd kind of defaulted to Drake May, but at this point, certainly in the last couple of weeks, I think I've really settled into it being Jaden Daniels, not just because I do think he's going to be the second quarterback off the board for the NFL draft, but I think his rushing upside is tremendous. I know with that LSU offense, how it's set up, the receivers that he had made that much easier, but he still achieved a great deal of success there in his 2 years at LSU. And I feel like one thing that he does tremendously well is really being able to layer the ball in on all levels of the field, in all thirds of the field. I do have some mild concerns about, oddly enough, some of his shorter throws kind of to the left and to the right. It seems like the touch is a bit off there sometimes. But I think that's something that maybe just kind of getting in tempo he can work on. But those money throws when he's kind of hitting those deep outs and that kind of stuff, I think that's going to provide tremendous fantasy success and NFL success for him.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels, obviously the reigning Heisman winner from LSU, expected to go in the top 3 picks. And with that rushing upside, of course, we're playing fantasy football here, right? This is an extension of the NFL. It's not the exact the game that the people they play at the NFL. But no, I definitely agree with your reasons there, and we might be coming back to that when I touch on it. But before that, we're going to get to Jerry, and let me just do a little precursor of why the question was a rookie QB2. It's because the consensus on the first overall pick has kind of been decided, I guess, if you to put it that way. If you look at the book market, I think it's like negative to 2,500 for Caleb Williams to be the Bears selection at 101. But here we're talking about something different. The answer might be different. Jerry, who is your rookie QB2?
You know what? I asked you guys in our chat if I could use Caleb Williams because Drake May is actually my QB1, but I'm gonna pivot. I'm gonna say I'm going with Drake May. Drake May is my QB1, but in this specific situation, I mean, in most super flex drafts, you're not gonna get Caleb beyond pick 3. I mean, you'd be lucky if he falls to pick 2 for you, unless somebody really wants Marvin Harrison Jr. So it's one of those things where, like, especially the guy that we're breaking down today, he has pick 3. There's a chance he could get a Daniels or a Drake May, but he's probably not getting a chance at Caleb Williams. So Caleb Williams is my personal QB2. I'm going to say Drake May for the purpose of this, for the purpose of this exercise. But yeah, I mean, ideally from a fantasy standpoint, we're all hoping that he goes number 2 to Washington, or maybe Minnesota trades up or something like that, because we don't want him to fall to 3 to New England where they don't have a lot of weapons there. But going to Washington, having Terry McLaurin, having Gibson and Eckler out of the backfield, I mean, and Drake May can also run the ball as well. So, I mean, you can't like listen to the comparisons. I've heard lazy comparisons of him to Mitch Trubisky. That's not fair. I've heard lazy comparisons of him to Sam Howell just because they all played at UNC.
Right.
That's not fair. Drake May is going to be, I think he's going to be a stud. My personal one. If I had 101, unfortunately, I'm not going to take him because I'm smarter than that. I'll probably go with Caleb or Marvin Harrison. But I'd be happy to get Drake May as a consolation prize as the QB2 in most drafts.
Yeah, no, I love that answer. Honestly, a lot to unpack now and then in the rest of our show. But just quick shout out, Jamie. Hey, how you doing? Glad you can join us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and listening in. But Jerry, I really loved your answer because I think you hit on a prudent point to consider when you're doing your rookie drafts is not to just pass up what is the best value move to do. I've heard this kind of example more when you talk about Marvin Harrison versus Malik Nabers. People who have Malik Nabers as their wide receiver 1, I would still say you need to take Marvin Harrison Jr. ahead because the perceived dynasty value of Marvin Harrison, or in this situation, Caleb Williams, is going to be higher than those other guys. Even if you rate them higher, the dynasty value is not going to be as high as our generational talents. But coming back to the point, my answer is also going to be Jayden Daniels, and to very similar reasons as Chu. I think just with the rushing upside in the standard 4-point passing touchdown leagues, he's going to give you a ceiling that most quarterbacks are going to struggle to hit. Jerry touched on Drake May's running, and I would even say in the red zone, I wouldn't be surprised if Drake May runs in a few more touchdowns than Jayden Daniels. People almost call him as Josh Allen's brain and Justin Herbert's body, and that's maybe a comp we like a little bit more. But I could see him kind of just like pushing through and trying to get those extra yards. But coming back to it, Daniels is my answer for all the reasons that Chu eloquently put out earlier. But a good discussion that we're going to get into a little bit more as we talk through that second tier of rookie picks after the 102. After the 101, the 102, presumably in most leagues, in 90+% of leagues, I would imagine, Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. are off the clock by the time we get to 103. My question that I'm going to start out with, and I'm going to go to Jerry for this one, is how far do you see that second tier going? Is it 103 to 105? Is it beyond 105, and what players do you kind of put in that second tier, Jerry?
It's probably 103 to 107, 106, 107. Okay. In a super flex league, you have the 3 quarterbacks, I think. And then, I mean, you're going to get a lot of hype on JJ McCarthy too, which, I mean, he's not in that tier to me personally, but depending on where he lands. And if you're a QB needy team, they might be your pick. And then you obviously have the 3 wide receivers, Odunze, Malik Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison Jr. And then Brock Bowers is up there. So that puts us.
That was 8
around,
players at 108.
yeah, that puts us around like 7 or 8. So yeah, I'd say probably that's probably all in tier 1.
Do you agree with that, Chu? All the way through 107, 108, is that where your tier break comes, or is it a little bit earlier?
No, I would still say 107. I think if it's a non-tight end premium or a very minimal tight end premium, I think Bowers is going to be the back end of that tier, or maybe the second to last of that tier if you're maybe depending on need. But I think the only thing in terms of tight end premium would be what pushes him up at all. And then, I mean, the interesting thing is kind of putting all these people on the one tier. It then kind of comes down to either team need, if you really feel like you can pick any one of those guys at the 103 and it fits a need and you aren't able to trade back. If you maybe think you're interested in the wide receiver that the 2 people behind you are maybe the least interested in, so you think you could still get them and trade back. So this is really the spot where I feel like it's tremendously important to kind of feel out your league and see if you can move back and if you'd want to. If not, take your guy at 103 and you feel good about it.
Yeah. I actually, you brought up a lot of points that I do want to get into. Just does it end up being a flat tier is kind of what I want to get at, and the advice that, hopefully will help the team we have today through, because they do have the 103. But if you're sitting, let's narrow the range. If you're sitting in the 103, if you have a 103, 104, Jerry, are you looking to trade back? Or does it depend kind of on team need? Do you not want to miss out on a QB needy team?
It definitely depends on the team need. And Chu does make a good point about Brock Bowers, especially in a non-tight end premium. But if I'm sitting there at 103 and I got a team that we're looking at today, I'm definitely looking at quarterback. And I mean, like I said, we're probably, if you're at 103, you're guaranteed Caleb, Drake May, or Daniels. And so, I mean, if I'm at 4, maybe I'm trading back because those top 3 go. And then that you might be able to get a big haul for potentially Marvin Harrison. But if I'm at 3 with the team, especially with the team that we have today, or like a really super needy QB team, then yeah, I'm definitely going to be staying there and taking one of those 3.
No, I hear you there. And just a kind of disclaimer, if you will, we're talking in super flex language here. Of course, if you're playing one QB leagues, you got to kind of take that quarterbacks out of the consideration here. Of course, as there, the thumbs down popping up. But of course, if you're playing in tight end premium, then you might have to move Brock Bowers up depending on the format. Before we get into the team, which of course a lot of our thoughts and discussion is going to be guided around the team that we have, I do want to just get into the keep trade cut values of some of these rookies. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr. is 11th highest rated. Caleb Williams is the 14th highest rated. Those are our generational group. Now, then going to 26, Malik Neighbors is actually the 3rd highest rated rookie currently on Keep Trade Cut. Jaden Daniels is then at pick 29. So both of them kind of in the first 3 rounds of startups early. Honestly, could see Neighbors at 26, maybe even creeping into the second. Rome Odunze goes at 33. Drake May falling all the way down to 40. Just generally just hearing those kinds of values that I'm reading out to you, do you think that's fair assessments of these rookies coming in?
I mean, it makes me a little uncomfortable. I understand the hype. And again, obviously this is the time in the year where the hype is going to be at its highest.
Right.
But I get really nervous when we're talking. I don't care their lineage of how good their dad was when they played. I don't care what college they went to. All this stuff. It's a rookie going to the NFL. Once we get landing spot, I may feel a little bit better about kind of projecting, hey, they're going to a team that is normally pretty good at developing receivers. So even a good receiver going there could develop and really maximize their potential. Or going somewhere where there's a Desmond Ridder-esque quarterback where it's like, well, they're going to get Drake London and it's maybe not going to go tremendously well. So I'm a little leery with these guys, specifically without landing spot, put them quite so high. But at least in terms of the rookie fever, I get why some of these guys, you can probably get that kind of value when you're actually trading with the right kind of person. But I think if you maybe deal with the majority of the dynasty landscape, I don't know that if you really came down to trading, like if it wasn't a pick and it was the player, I don't know that you'd really get these values. But maybe I'm wrong. And I mean, keep trade cut, they've never been wrong. So I don't know.
Keep trade cut is basically the Bible around
Yep.
these around these parts. No, really a lot of interesting stuff here. I mean, we're playing dynasty fantasy football in 2024 when perhaps the movement towards building your teams with young wide receivers is at its peak, right? We're about to get an influx of supposedly 15 to 20 NFL ready prospects. At some point the bubble may have to burst, but Jerry, just to give you a few names going around, Malik Neighbors, for example, the two right ahead, AJ Brown, Sam Laporta, two right behind, Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, and then there's Jaden Daniels. Would you trade Malik Neighbors, or would you trade the 103 for AJ Brown straight up?
No, not the 103. I might go back a couple picks just because, like, I mean, I like the rookie hype and rookie fever, and I think you could get more value out of him when you have the player maybe than the actual pick.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'm keeping the 103, and if it's Neighbors, if it's Marvin, if it's one of the quarterbacks, then I'm happy taking one of those picks. And I don't, of the 4 or 5 guys that you named around him, I'm not overly, like, I'm not jumping at it. Like, maybe I love AJ Brown too. So I mean, it's hard to say, but like if you said maybe like an Ayuk or I don't know, somebody else in that range, like an Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yep.
Yeah, I would take something like that. But
yeah,
none of the guys that you mentioned in that area.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And on that note, we are going to transition to talking about today's team that we're analyzing that has the 103. So let me just pull this guy up so we can take a look as we kind of talk through some of the put us off to the side like that. And here we go. This is the team that I kind of gave a sneaky preview earlier and cut out the quarterback spots. Yeah, it definitely seemed like paradise when you only had to play, Bijan Breece and a couple of stud young players. But of course, this is actually a super flex league, and that is important to get through because Sleeper, for some reason, does not convert that last flex spot here that Kincaid is sitting in into super flex. It's a super flex league. And right here, my man Mezos, thank you very much for submitting the team. Quarterback situation is not looking too hot. So let me just go through a few facts about the team before I turn it over. This team is in a 12-team Superflex half PPR league, 9 starters, no tight end premium, which is also going to be a discussion point. Finished 10th last year. That's how they earned the 103, their own pick. No other 24 picks. The 103 is simply the only pick this team has in this draft. They do have an extra 25 first, an extra 25 second. And then just to run through a few of the names, QB, we can skip it, but no, just for completeness, it is Darnold and Ritter at the QB position, RB, Bijan and Breece, wide receiver Olave, London Dell, tight end McBride, Kincaid, and Kittle. These are kind of like the major pieces that I'm putting out there. But Chu, let me go to you first. What are your thoughts and kind of the strengths and weaknesses of the team? Overall thoughts.
A weakness I would say is quarterback. I don't want to be too hot takey here, but I would say another weakness, and it's a strength but a weakness given this format. 3 very good tight ends, but you don't need 3 very good tight ends. And even to the point of the 3 that are, very good. I mean, even having, I'm a big believer in Jelani Woods, assuming they don't get Brock Bowers in Indianapolis, but like that's your 4th tight end. So, and you have 2 tremendous young guys in McBride and Kincaid. We'll get to what we need to do with this team here in a second because I already had some trade ideas. But in terms of other strengths, it is very good. I know you still need to address the quarterback position, but looking at the running backs and wide receivers, the best ones that you have at each of those positions are younger guys. So I think you're in a good spot in terms of whether you're able to kind of address certain needs, most specifically quarterback now and compete, that would be okay. But I also think that given you only have the 103 this year, if you choose to kind of punt and still just kind of accumulate talent and not specifically be concerned with getting the quarterback and trying to win the league and score the most points this year. If you try to punt and have your pick and hopefully that other first that you have in 2025 to be in the top half as well, I think you could wait until 2025 to compete. So you're in a unique spot where there's plenty of talent on your team to where you can make some trades and move around that I think you can kind of fill it out in like a better way to really maximize the points that you're going to be scoring. But I still think there's not a tremendous amount of depth outside of the tight end position, and that's not really where you need it.
Yeah. Jerry, flipping the same question over to you. Overall thoughts on the team, and then if you could take us through when do you feel the window is for the team? Do you agree with Chu? It's more in 2025, or is there a case could moves be made and the window open up from 2024 itself?
Yeah, obviously you're going to need at least one quarterback that's playing games, and that might be Sam Darnold for a couple of weeks, depending on what Minnesota does in the draft. But yeah, I mean, it could potentially be a 2024 fringe playoff team and maybe advance a round or two if they make the right moves. And I also have a couple ideas in mind involving either that 103 or a couple players too. But like he could probably just get rid of Ritter. I mean, a lot of the bench is pretty much droppable outside of a couple players I might keep, but the starters, as long as health is on their side, I think he'll win more games than he loses if he could fill in that quarterback spot pretty nicely.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to see. I was watching the Fantasy Footballers or some show that they were doing their early redraft previews, and rightfully Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson were ranked as top 5 RBs for 2024. How can a team like that not compete? But that's the game we play, Dynasty. So we're gonna get into the 103. That's gonna be the focus here, and the question right from the owner: what do you do with the 103? For example, should they trade back, try to get, if we think the second tier is as deep as we kind of alluded to earlier, do they trade back, get Odunze? Perhaps McCarthy might go to a better spot than whoever goes at 3. Or in this team, when the need is so clearly quarterback, do you stand pat and take whoever it is, your QB2, perhaps the QB3 at the 103? What do you think, Chu?
I think you absolutely, first off, don't bother trying to scoot ahead of where you are. I think just understand, like Jerry mentioned, a quarterback that is a viable, going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL is going to be at 103, period. That's going to happen. So that's kind of a relief of like, if your fallback plan is just to pick the best quarterback, you'll be okay. But really understanding that, with what the rest of this team looks like, my thought of how aggressive you want to be with this thing is if you're trying to move the 103 and you're trying to either get yourself a top 12 quarterback, and it may just depend on where in that top 12 you're able to get. If it's just the 103 and you're able to move it for someone that's on like the QB 10, 11, 12, if you pair it with if you want to get really aggressive and do like the 103 in London for like a Jalen Hurts or something like that, I think London's going to do well this year, but I don't think he's going to be the second coming of Justin Jefferson. No offense to Kirk Cousins and everything, but I don't think they're just going to simply recreate what they did in Minnesota over in Atlanta. So however aggressive you want to be with that, I know that in 2024, you don't have a wealth of other picks, but it is helpful that the only pick you do have is the 103. So if you kind of get those feelers out and see if there's somebody else that's really interested in the 103, whether it's because they want to get the best wide receiver available, or they're also interested in a quarterback and they'd rather trade out of whoever they have currently, I would say definitely put those feelers out.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely hearing you there. I mean, a lot of options, especially as the rookie hype builds up. I think that's kind of the question I wanted to get at with the show is the value pick to make the pick, or is it to trade out? Is it to pair the 103 with one of the pieces and trade up. There are a lot of options. Jerry, what are you generally feeling if this was your team and you had the 103? What is your game plan?
One thing that I was thinking of is taking that 103 before the draft, before we know where landing spots are, and maybe targeting a team that either has an abundance of quarterbacks or a couple of the older guys just to get this team rolling for 2024. Did you mention that this team has 2025 picks as well?
Yep, an extra first and an extra second in 2025.
Okay, so like he's built to see what he could do this year and then kind of retool in next year's draft. Okay, so like I was looking at a couple guys. I mean, I don't know the rest of the league, so I don't know who's on what team, but like maybe find the Russ Wilson owner or the Kirk Cousins owner or this guy's the Sam Darnold owner, but somebody that has maybe two of those like fringe guys or maybe a Russ and Will Levis and throw a pick together and throw something together where you're getting two quarterbacks in return, but they don't have to be top tier quarterbacks for the 103. And then that guy could take whatever quarterback he wants at 103, or if he has an abundance, then he's in the Marvin Harrison sweepstakes. And then some later trades down the road where if Jamie in here mentioned maybe sell Kittle for sure. He's got 4 or 5 different other tight ends on this team. Looking at selling Kittle, whatever package you put together for Kittle, maybe you take, I don't want to say take the loss on the trade, but maybe take the lesser end of the trade to get Kittle off the team, maybe get a pick back, and also get another of those mid-tier quarterbacks in that same deal. I mean, I don't know if that's going to work in a non-tight end premium, but I'd be looking at trying to get maybe 2 to 3 quarterbacks with that 103 and George Kittle before the draft even starts.
Yeah, and kind of Jamie reiterating or agreeing with what you said there, sell Kittle for sure. And that's a question the owner had. But before we kind of get on, this comment from Jamie as well kind of caught my eye. Seems like this team is building backwards, usually focused on RBs after QBs and wide receivers are set. I think that's what we all kind of aim to do. But we've all been in leagues where things fall a certain way, and you're not always in the ideal situation here, but that's why we're here to help with the fantasy assessment. I really like the ideas you're tossing out. Is it better to, you have the perceived value of the 103, which, yeah, like I said, Malik Neighbors is the 3rd highest rated rookie right now, is the 26th overall player on Keep Trade Cut. Trevor Lawrence is a spot below him. Brock Purdy is below him. Even if I drop, even if you say I'm not the biggest Tua fan personally, but even if you say can we add Tua and the 203 and then the 203 turns into Michael Penix or Bo Nix, traded for Russell Wilson, traded for a Geno Smith, is that a better use of value? And that's kind of the heart of what I want to get at. But the tight end discussion is definitely an interesting one. This is, of course, a non-tight end premium league. And the team here has Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, and George Kittle. I know we were kind of chatting about trading George Kittle. Is that what you would think to do, Chu? Or is there a case the better way to extract value is selling one of the younger guys? Would you consider selling McBride or Kincaid?
I was actually thinking of moving to Kincaid. I think that kind of a similar situation to London. I don't think London's value can be much higher until he plays a snap, and then you hope it either stabilizes or even goes higher. I don't think it will. Kincaid, I know that wide receiver room is a mess. I do like Curtis Samuel, though. But even hearing the Bills talk about, we don't need an alpha. We can just more or less kind of figure it out. And it's like, for him saying that, then that gets people, the Kincaid owner, even more excited, thinking, great, we finally have the slot tight end that they're going to feed him like they fed Cole Beasley, except he's better than Cole Beasley. He's bigger, he's fast, he's whatever. But I think if you can sell him, I mean, you could probably tear down from him to, I know once you get out of those, that top group of the tight ends, it's a very massive tier of just kind of guys. But again, this is not tight end premium, so it doesn't really matter. If you really wanted to just get another tight end still that's startable, if you wanted to tear down to a Jake Ferguson or Evan Ingram, where you're going to get steady production plus a pick plus that plus a second plus something else. Like at this point, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of depth. Again, we're talking about the running back and wide receiver position. You got a good set of starters there, but outside of, wide receiver, it's what Kendrick Bourne and Wandale Robinson. That's about it. Running back, Elijah Mitchell, maybe. Like there's really nothing behind it. So I think really building some depth there. Again, 2024 playoff run with this team is possible. You have to, I think, address it pretty quickly because I think once the 103 pick is made, the value doesn't disappear. But I think it's, depending on what someone would want at the 103, it's a bit more liquid and kind of flexible in terms of who you can kind of deal it to. Once you make the pick and it's Jaden Daniels, Drake May, or whoever, then it's that person, then it's that position, and maybe it will be less appealing to some people.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of tack on to what you said there, this owner wouldn't even need to consider tearing down from a Kincaid or a McBride because there's no need to fill that void with another tight end coming in. Just Kincaid, for example, is the 51st ranked player on Keep Trade Cut. A couple of names that come after him include Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison. Takedown's already on this team. QBs, Jared Goff comes after Bryce Young. Don't even need to address it in like a position for position kind of thing. But yeah, I guess it's a question. What I would say, my overall thoughts on this team right before we come back to it, overall thoughts is there's a lot of value, but it may not be allocated in the best way to win fantasy football games in championships. So on that note, and coming back to Jerry, one thing the owner had asked is it worth taking some of his 2025 picks, extra first, extra second, to jump ahead a year to try and make that push this year itself? Would you sell any of that future capital now or hold on to it?
Yeah, if, like we've been saying for most of this guy's team, it's ready to compete right now. So if you have, especially if you look at and you probably heard this on other fantasy podcasts. I know I've heard it on the Footballers, for example, but trading a 2025 pick for a player now, you're getting 1 to 2 more years out of that rookie player that 1 or 2 more current years out of that rookie player that you'd be selecting next year. And depending on who it is, you might even be waiting another year for him to really come into his own and be fantasy relevant. So get that player now and get him on your team as opposed to waiting and seeing if a lottery pick works out. So yeah, if you could get, especially being in the first round, I don't know how deep this league is with knowing future rookies and 2025 picks and stuff like that. But if you could get a guy that is on top of things and knowing who's coming out next year, it's a better running back class next year, a couple quarterbacks. I don't think there's really a super stud next year, not yet at least. But definitely a running back heavy class. The other wide receiver from OSU should be coming out next year, could be just as good as Marvin Harrison. So if you could sell those pieces and get a good return, then yeah, I'd definitely be dipping into the 2025. And it seems like he's not afraid to do that because he only has 1 pick in 2024.
Yeah, no, this owner definitely willing to wheel and deal. I have a lot of good points you made there. I want to bring up this point from Jamie and kind of ask our panel here. Start 9. I wouldn't want to break up the 103 into multiple assets, and I think that's very valid. Shorter formats, you want those super studs, but Chu, like we've been talking about, is that value something you'd be looking to reallocate from a rookie that has all the hype into veteran quarterback plus extra?
I'd be open to that in terms of moving. I know that we all get excited about, most specifically, those first rounders, certainly the first half of the first round in dynasty rookie drafts. But again, I know once we get far enough past it, you look back, I started, my first dynasty league was in 2018. I look back, I wasn't the only person that was the first time playing Dynasty, but you can kind of see people got smarter in some instances in terms of how they drafted. And even with that being the case, some were still like, why on earth did we pick that guy? And it's oh yeah, when you look back at how everyone was talking about him, it's a lot of people thought that was a good pick at the time. And whether it be the person just simply didn't develop, it wasn't like injuries derailed their career or anything. Sometimes just players don't pan out and you don't see it happening until they're actually in the NFL and it just kind of, the wheels fall off. So I know the 103 is appealing. I know that, again, this is a quarterback needy team. So if you're kind of nervous about making a deal for a veteran quarterback or something like that, you can stay at the 103 and you're going to get a quarterback who's going to start in the NFL. So like that's a safe thing. And that's, kind of like the doing nothing is still making a decision. You're still making a decision to get a quarterback there. So that's entirely okay. But I think there's, strategic ways that you can address the quarterback position, moving the 103 and then maybe help even in other areas of this team down the road. So,
Yeah. Definitely hear you there. And I think I want to get this question from Jamie, but I think one thing that's kind of standing out to me, just like in the discourse, is a lot of people comparing this class here to what we had in 2021, right? 2021, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, et cetera, et cetera. And now probably happy to have Trevor Lawrence. Are you overjoyed that you used the 101 on him or paid like first round startup pick costs last year? Probably not. If you want to make the comparison, Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, then you look beyond below that, and you're not happy if you took Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's where it brings a lot of these interesting points in, like what is the best use of value to kind of bring it back to our earlier tight end point. Jamie, what do you think about this question? What about selling Kincaid for Bryce Young or Deshaun Watson? Would you do that, or is there another name that you'd look to target quarterback wise?
Is that me or is it Jerry?
No.
Oh, sorry, okay. Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a Bills fan. I do like my Kincaid. But yeah, I mean, you only need to start one tight end. I'm a high on Trey McBride as well. I would definitely. I don't know. I mean, you definitely need quarterback bodies. Maybe I would do it for Bryce Young and see maybe if you could get a third round pick or something back. Like, I wouldn't do it straight up. If you could get both, fine. But Kincaid for Bryce Young and a late second or just any third, just something to add on top of it. Especially since we saw Bryce Young last year, didn't look too hot. We did see Kincaid last year. He did look too hot. And he's going in this year as potentially the number 1, number 2 target for Josh Allen. But definitely need some guys. They're not going to throw Bryce Young to the side. He's the 2024 starter, should be the 2025 starter. They did get him some weapons, so they did beef up the offensive line as well. So I mean, I think I would do that. Not Watson. I don't think I would do Watson. It seems like they're growing tired of him, and if it wasn't for all that guaranteed money, he'd be in a Russell Wilson situation right now. But yeah, I think I'd say yes on Bryce Young.
True. Our resident Panther. Would you do that?
Yes, and I would for Bryce Young at least. Yeah, with Watson, I know he's not too old yet, but I think if he was it's really hard to kind of say like the what ifs of his specific situation, just given everything that's happened, the cap hit it, like how he's played since he's came back, injuries, how serious have they been? Just kind of confusing how all of it's kind of played out to this point. Because I don't think we can attribute any of this to him being too old of a quarterback. Again, he's still 29, maybe
Watson, yeah,
28, 29,
if not younger.
I mean, the belief is, they hope he can kind of turn it around. Maybe not to his prime, but something decent. But Bryce Young, I think, in terms of best case scenarios for him, yeah, Dave Canales, what you saw they did with the interior offensive line. Getting Deontay Johnson, obviously going to be addressing at least one wide receiver with those 2 second-round picks. So it at least will be better for him. But then the con with that is if he doesn't look better with a much better situation, I think his draft stock or his trade stock might take a sharp dip at some point during this season. But I'm cautiously optimistic as a Panthers fan and as a dynasty owner in 2 leagues, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I would like either of these 2 names or a QB in that range. Tack on a late second. Let's say you can tack on the Deshaun Watson, Bryce Young plus the 209 for Kincaid. can you take that 209 and turn that into Stafford, Geno Smith, and suddenly you've addressed, you've got the options in for the QB2. You feel more comfortable about what you want to do at the 103. I don't know how the owner feels, but presumably it's almost like a kind of a handcuffed situation where you need to take you need a quarterback. You're in a position to take a quarterback, but is that the best thing for your team? Maybe, trying to address it in a different way gives you the flexibility to make the most of those things. I do kind of want to get back into the Bryce Young chat, but just want to say a quick hi to Kyle. How you doing? Glad you joined us today. Bryce Young for me is very interesting because I think that's kind of at the microcosm of this whole debate is, do rookie quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, or young wide receivers retain value better? We may have talked about this in one of our earlier episodes, and the two players I want to take an example of is Bryce Young and Jackson Smith-Njigba as the two. Now, JSN, he was going perhaps in the third round, fourth round of startups. Bryce Young was going earlier than that last year. JSN is now the 59th overall player on KTC, and Bryce Young is all the way down at 68. So when you look at bring that back to the 103, does a Drake May on the Patriots, I promise a question is coming here, but does a Drake May on the Patriots go through a bad season and return his value? Would you be comfortable holding the Patriots quarterback, Jerry?
Yeah, I mean, and especially with, both those guys too were obviously first round picks, but like, you got to think that you're getting at least, unless your name's Trey Lance, you're getting 3 years out of the guy, and whether it's a good year or a bad year, I think you're getting 3 years out of the guy, and then have to make a decision on him. We see the direction that the Patriots are going. They are obviously, Bill's not there anymore. They hired a nice young coach, so there's going to be some growing pains no matter who's under center for them. But like, I think that the nice young coach with whatever quarterback goes in there, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, I think it's going to work out. And then they can, once they get that guy, they can bring in weapons and hopefully give you some fantasy relevancy.
Realistically, though, is the Patriots quarterback going to be the 103? I know for some people, Jerry, for example, who has Drake May as his QB1, even if Drake May goes to the Patriots, you might feel comfortable because you believe in the talent. But true, for example, if, let's say, in this scenario where Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. are going, are you then almost just looking at the landing spot before you decide the next quarterback to go?
That all depends. I know, like what we're talking about here, it's really just which quarterback. And yeah, if I'm a Drake May fan, but he goes to New England, and I'm, obviously less hot on that landing spot than if it was in Washington, that would be where I'd be looking to move this pick to be like, can I trade this to get a different established quarterback? Because while I like the player, I have, like, if I can't get the deal done, fine, I'll get the player I like and hope he just perseveres and figures it out. But I have some concerns that, hey, this might not work out as it hasn't in the past for the previous guy. So can I get someone who is already in a situation who is going to be a top half at worst veteran quarterback in a pretty steady situation and believe in that production, especially because with this team that we're looking at now, you need quarterback production. At a minimum, you need a starting quarterback. So that's where the barometer starts, but you really do need some quality production, at least out of the first quarterback, because with some of the players here, like, you don't have to start a quarterback in that second super flex spot, but it would be most ideal in terms of just the ease of having depth of those other as injuries are going to happen. So,
what about something like this? Nobody's biting at the 103. You got Drake May to the Patriots, or you got JJ McCarthy to the Vikings or the Raiders, who's got Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams. Which way are you going there?
That's that's a tough one, and presumably trading back is not an option. I think with quarterback especially, I would stick to my evaluation of the talent, and I think for me, I think Drake May is a far better quarterback than JJ McCarthy, and I think Drake May at least is my NFL QB2 at least. I have Drake May as a better NFL quarterback than Jaden Daniels. For me, fantasy is a different story. Um, the JJ McCarthy Vikings dynamic is gonna be interesting. What do you think, Chu? If JJ McCarthy goes to the Vikings and Drake May go, whoever you have as QB2 goes to the Patriots, what are you doing there?
I'm taking Patriots QB 10 times out of 10. I mean, I guess perfect timing that I had the JJ McCarthy rookie profile drop today, but I mean, he's my QB5
Yeah.
behind Penix. Like, I get the allure of what McCarthy can be, but I mean, I feel like the NFL is littered with that type of quarterback that doesn't pan out. Not through maybe any fault of their own, but it's just they don't develop for any number of different reasons. And I'm not saying you have to be a perfectly like the most refined quarterback coming out of college because you're doing plenty of your molding there, and you even still continue to grow and develop in the NFL. But I have enough concerns with McCarthy to be jumping to the NFL and thinking that he's going to start week 1, 2024 and easily grow into what we all want him to be. And I don't think his ceiling is as high as a lot of people think. I get why it seems that way versus the older Penix and the older Bo Nix and that kind of stuff. But just because he's younger, just because I know he has some good traits, but that just doesn't by default make his ceiling so tremendously high that he's going to become better than all of them. We don't know that. So I Patriots QB all the way.
Yeah. I mean, JJ McCarthy is such a difficult eval. I was going to come to you, Jerry, for the same question I want to ask. Does it make any difference in your head that you own Sam Darnold in this league? Presumably, you can lock up the Vikings quarterback, for the future. What would you do there?
Well, you just read my mind because I was actually going to ask that same question. Like sitting with this exact team, having Sam Darnold. Basically, I mean, you don't want to handcuff your own quarterbacks, and I'm not a fan of handcuffing in general, but like especially not quarterbacks. Only one of them is going to play, but almost guaranteeing yourself having a starter one way or another, whether it's a rookie JJ McCarthy or Sam Darnold, or they split time and you're getting Darnold for the first half and then JJ comes in. But I was also thinking about going the Drake May route with this situation then and not handcuffing myself, because also if you are getting those rookie bumps or at least getting the first couple weeks with Sam Darnold, then you're guaranteeing yourself 2 quarterbacks, if that's assuming Drake May starts off the bat as well. So maybe Sam Darnold is in there to kind of teach JJ McCarthy. We're going into, I think Drake May, if he goes to the Patriots, is starting from week 1. With the young coach, where up in Minnesota, coach has been there for a couple of years, he might lean to the vet, and then you're getting a couple weeks out of him, maybe longer depending on how he goes with Addison and Jefferson, and Hockenson as well. But I'd probably lean the May way as well. Go with the Patriots way. I don't want to keep on saying May. Go with the Patriots way as well, and then hoping that I get a couple starts out of Sam Darnold, and then that'll give me a couple more weeks to buy some time and trade for somebody week 4, week 5 if I have to.
Yeah, I think I don't think it really should change too much of your thinking. Just having Darnold, whereas maybe in a redraft format, maybe you want to lock out that spot. To bring a different scenario, I'm gonna go Jerry first, and then to Chu. What if, say, the generational tier has been cracked by one of these other guys? What if a Drake May, Jaden Daniels? What if QB2 goes to the 102? You're up on the clock at the 103, Jerry. Marvin Harrison Jr. is staring at you with this team, behind you at the locker room. What do you do then?
Well, we talked about a little earlier the guys that are in that tier. So with this team, I'm probably going with the other quarterback that didn't go. If I have another established quarterback, or if I have even a pair of vets that potentially can start, I would lean Marvin. But in this situation, I gotta get my hands on a quarterback, because we didn't even mention that the other quarterback on this guy's team is Ritter, who was moved in the offseason. I don't remember where he went. Went to Arizona or Atlanta.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Arizona.
No, he went to Arizona.
Oh, yeah, he went to Arizona. Okay, yeah, it's really blurry on my screen.
Somewhere else he's not going to play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just before we get to, I want to come to Chew for your thoughts. Quick question for Jerry. Of course, our IDP expert in the chat from Jamie. Who are you drafting from this trio?
Probably. I mean, if it's a best ball league with IDP, it's definitely custom setup because they don't have those on Underdog and stuff. So, he says he's leaning Warner. I'm probably leaning Bosa. I mean, they've been obviously adding to that defense, and he's still top. I mean, they're all top defensive players in the league, but Bosa, I think you're going to get a lot more sack opportunity out of him. He seems to just he's like that next. He's right after TJ Watt and right after I have Bosa above Garrett, but behind like Max Crosby. So I would go Bosa.
To a IDP newbie like me, this is like saying, are you drafting Jefferson, Chase, or CeeDee Lamb with the names that I'm reading? Hopefully that answered your question, Jamie. But yeah, Chew, what do you think? Caleb goes, QB2 goes, Marvin Harrison is available on the board at the 103. What are you doing with this team?
You know what? I'm feeling in a festive mood. So how about this? What if that happens? What if you go ahead and pick Marvin Harrison? You use Kincaid, preferably, to move him for a veteran quarterback, kind of whatever you can do there, and you use a 2025 first to get another quarterback. I mean, if you do that, you have an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver. You already have an embarrassment of riches at running back. Again, you would still need to try and build depth as much as you can, which I know you don't have any other picks in 2024, but you may be able to add some thirds or whatever in the trades that I'm talking about. So you're able to kind of get some depth pieces of this running back here or whatever. So, I mean, if you do that, that's a way to compete this year. And again, you'd still have one of the first in 2025 and the 2 seconds in 2025. So your team is still set up to be young across the board outside of whatever the two quarterbacks are. If maybe they're a bit older veterans. But, you know, with how this team is set up, I mean, you don't need 2 top 10 quarterbacks on this team, given 12 team, correct? So,
12 team.
I mean, you know, I know it's pretty shallow on starters, but I think that would still be okay if you had 2 top 15 quarterbacks, preferably one is solidly top 10. But yeah, I mean, if you want to compete that way, then, you know, there's a bit of flexibility to it. But obviously the safest thing is just to draft the quarterback. But hey, have some fun.
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison, why not?
Why not? I mean, especially like when you have a build like this where you can kind of compensate with your skill players for like the deficit you might get at the quarterback position. Just to move away from the 103 talk, and Jamie, I mean, said it perfectly, really. Like, so many options to explore this team just because it's holding a lot of desirable names. And so, Jerry, would you consider, is there a case to sell a Bijan or a Brees, one of the wide receivers? Obviously, we talked about the tight ends, but so let's keep it on the running back or the receivers. Would you sell a Brees Hall to try and get in that quarterback and depth or rookie picks or whatever? Would you be thinking about that?
No, I'd be more likely to sell the 103 than any of the running backs because you have to start 2, unfortunately, and beyond the 2 that are starting, there's really not another body on this team that is really worthy of starts except for an Elijah Mitchell 5 touches a game or whatever you're going to get out of him. So I'd be more likely to sell the 103 than either of the running backs. I might lean towards one of the wide receivers, but it'd have to be a good value because you're, like Chu mentioned already, the only bodies that are on the bench worth anything really are Kendrick Bourne, Wan'Dale Robinson, and you can make all the jokes about him and on all the drops that he had last year, but Tony is still somebody to keep an eye on too, especially with the Rashee Rice news and being as young as he is, and we've seen flashes from him. So those 3 are really the only 3. I mean, I would drop the whole bench outside of those 3 basically, and Angel Woods. but I would. It's I,
I'm a Wandale
in
guy.
order
I'm
of
a Wandale guy.
in order of selling, I'd go yes to 103, no to running back, maybe to wide receiver, but I got to be winning that trade.
So let's stay on that, Jerry. If you're gonna sell, like let's say Drake London, you want to capitalize on the value bump that he's gotten. What kind of move are you making? Tier down wide receiver plus a pick, tier down plus a QB. What would you think to do there, Jerry?
I'd probably try to add to where I'm pretty weak at depth and weak at position overall. So maybe like a mid-tier quarterback, maybe a QB 14 to 24, something like that, plus another running back. I don't know, somebody like a J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards, people that are going to see significant touches now in
Just
LA.
a body, who's going to get touches, yeah, no, totally there. And then Jamie's saying, get Marvin Harrison, then sell one of the other receivers. I mean, maybe a little bit of insight from this league is that the person sitting at the 102 has Bryce Young, Justin Fields, and Kenny Pickett as the three QBs held by the 102 owner. I don't know what the 102 owner is going to do in this league, but it's not out of the realms of possibility that Marvin Harrison is available at the 103 to pick. So that might make things interesting. Chu, what about you? Kind of the same question with the other pieces, running backs and wide receivers. Are you looking to split any of those assets, use them to pivot value? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so running backs, no. And I mean, this is funny. So the trade I mentioned earlier when it was, hey, is it the 103 and Drake London to get a Jalen Hurts or something like that? I mean, I wouldn't hate that again if it's starting 9. I think that is something that would be tremendously valuable. I do understand that doing that, you lose a flex spot that you're currently using, and that's kind of using a pick and a player to do that. But, I think that's a move where if you're able to do some other ancillary moves to just get some kind of filler at the other flex spot, or you plug in Wandale, you plug in Kendrick Bourne, you hope injuries don't happen at running back, so that your team would still be a bit sensitive given the depth that you don't have. But I think you could still make some moves at tight end and stuff from tight end to give depth elsewhere. But that's a tremendous move where if you do that and it doesn't work for some reason, you go into 2025 with all of those picks, and you already have Jalen Hurts, you already have those running backs, you have those wide receivers. So that's the kind of thing where, like, if you shoot for the moon, land somewhere in the stars in 2024, that's okay. You can, in 2025, be positioned to easily get into the playoffs, barring a catastrophic series of injuries.
Yeah. No, I think just kind of like we've all been touched. There's just so many options, and the kind of extra capital in 2025 makes it an interesting case of like when do you push in to make those deals. But I think that's all we have today for the team. So thank you very much for the submission, Mezzos. Hope you enjoyed the show. A great one as always with the boys. Jerry, tell the people where they can find you, what you've been working on, and who you hope the Buffalo Bills draft at 28.
You can find me at Jerry Wilkie FM on Twitter/X. You can find me on Facebook, same name, Jerry Wilkie, or you can find us on the Discord. And at 28, I'm hoping that we either make a massive trade down and go get Neighbors, or if we stay at 28, I want Brian Thomas.
Yeah. Oh, 28, Brian. I've been seeing Adonai Mitchell as like the most common one because BTJ kind of goes in like the 17 to 20 range, but oh my, Neighbors and Josh Allen would be such. I mean, that's the 103 right there. Actually, change all of our answers. But Chu, what about you? Tell the people where they can find you, what you've been working on, and who you hope the Panthers will draft at 33 or 39.
Yeah, so check me out on Twitter and YouTube at Father Dynasty. Getting ramped up with the Father Dynasty podcast here next week before the draft, and of course going to be hitting it hopefully each week after the draft and so on and so forth as training camp kicks into high gear. Of course, check out the writing over it going for 2. And in terms of the Panthers, I'm okay if they move the 33rd pick, but if they do that, I mean, one of those picks has to be wide receiver. I'm hoping it's Troy Franklin. I really want them to do that. Lad McConkey, I've been seeing that everywhere at 33, but if they wanted to go center at 33 and then pick best wide receiver available at 39, I wouldn't hate it. The funny thing that I've heard some people say is, while I've seen that they've done some good things with the guards, they've helped try and fill the holes of defense that they've lost with Brian Burns and Frankie Louvu and all those guys, but they still even have needs at the places they've replaced with new players in free agency. So at this point, it's just stacking up talent and best player available. So, I mean, I can say they can't do anything wrong, but I can say that and then wildly disagree if they pick a Jonathan Mingo-like player again. If they do that, I will be furious.
I absolutely love that I've been seeing Xavier Legette go there. I mean,
I like it better than Keon Coleman.
Mind.
If they do Keon Coleman, I'm going to lose my shit.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great draft. Of course, kicking off 1 week from today. So thank you everyone for joining. I of course have been Rahul. You can find me on Twitter and Rahul11. You can find us here every other Thursday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm also, honestly, these days I talk a lot of soccer because my team isn't doing too well. But I'm also been hopping on a few podcasts. I've got one coming out on iHeartRadio this week, and then Chu and I separately have been doing division previews with the IDP Hunter on Twitter. So great content all coming out from the three of us soon, today, and in the future. So hope y'all enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and we'll see